Hello, I'm Maria Hall Brown, and this is LA Currents. Well, she's had a life of public service, from state senate and assembly to Congress to Secretary of Labor, and since 2014 as a county supervisor representing District 1. But frankly, that is really just the tip of the iceberg of what our guest today has done. I'm delighted to be joined by Hilda Solis. So nice to have you here.
Thank you again, Maria, for asking me, and it's a pleasure to be here.
You have truly had such a scope and breadth of service in so many things. I mentioned a few things, but that's not just everything that you have done. I mean, you worked with the Carter administration, so many different things.
Right. I mean, I think for me, my interest in politics started when I first ran for school board, Rio Hondo Community College out in Whittier, but I represented El Monte and South El Monte, and at that time they had districts, so I was able to run in a seat that became open, and I ran, and it was, the start for me to get involved in politics. And I remember 27 at the time, and this is a long time ago, right? But it was quite interesting because it was very challenging, and people kind of underestimate you if they think you're a little bit younger or you're of the opposite sex, or, what do you really bring to this job? And for me, it's always been about being a voice for the community and trying to expose opportunities for people that you represent so that they can take advantage of education or the services that you have a jurisdiction over.
So you've learned a lot, obviously, but the whole world of government does not sleep. And recently, specifically with the Los Angeles Board of Supervisors, a measure passed, Measure G, which is going to expand the board from 5 members to 9.
Yes.
So how is that process going to happen? And in addition, there's going to be another elected position, a CEO, sort of the mayor of the county. How does the board feel about it? How is it all going to play out? What's the timeline? What should people know about this measure?
Well, we're very fortunate that it did pass. And I think this is something, it's not a new idea. This has been talked about and attempted in, I would say, over the last maybe 3 or 4 decades, only it failed. This time around, I think it was opportune because of the reform movement itself that's taking place here in the city of LA, and the need to do the same thing with the county, because we also have had our challenges with Board of Supervisors and with things that go on with various departments. So I think the time and the setting was good to put forward this measure, and it was a motion that our chair, Lindsay Horvath, and Janice Hahn put forward, and of course, you need a third vote. I was the third vote to place it on the ballot. And it took education to let people know what we were attempting to do. And the idea was to expand the board so that we could have better representation, because as it is now, I represent 2 million people. There are 5 of us. That's 10 million people. We're larger than like 43 states.
Right.
Okay. I always laugh because I tell people I represent more people than Senator Bernie Sanders. Okay.
Wow.
Because he maybe represents 1 million or less. I represent 2 million.
Right.
But my jurisdiction is very different geographically. But to say that we need to have better representation localized, and with 9 seats, you're going to have 1 million people represented by 1 supervisor. So I think that is better, because it is hard. I will tell you, not that I don't like doing my job, I do, but I've heard time and time again how people want to have someone that is closer to them geographically. And I think it's an opportunity to have more diversity. Mm-hmm. Right now, we have 5 women, which people say, wow, that's diversity. Yes, it is. And who's to say that we're not going to continue to have more women? But I think there's opportunity to expand the board. And I've always heard there's a need, because we have now like 1.6 million AAPI residents in the county. They have been telling me they would like to see representation on the board. Well, here will be an opportunity perhaps for that to happen, and to have more localized representation in San Fernando, and possibly even in some of the other areas where some of our community members feel like their voices may not be amplified as they should.
So will that be a special election and people will step up to be,
Yes,
you know?
and that won't happen until after the census. So
Okay.
that won't happen until 3032. So we have time to prepare for this.
Okay.
And then likewise, the CEO elected position, it would be somewhat like the mayor, someone who's going to actually deal with, I would say, more transparency and with our departments. Because as it is now, the 5 of us members can ask any department various questions, and we all have different opinions, and then we have to come together and vote on whatever we believe the department's budget should look like and what have you. And sometimes I think the public doesn't always get to preview what the budget process is and how departments make decisions about those budgets. And I think that's very important, to have more transparency. And I remember in the legislature, that's what they would do. So I think that's going to be important. We're also creating an ethics commission.
I was going to ask that,
Yes.
because when you brought up the word transparency,
Yes.
you know, the first thing that comes to mind is the ethics commission and the need for it. And what was the impetus for that?
I think the fact that we had to kind of separate ourselves from it and have an independent commission design, and that will come about shortly after, I would say in a couple of years, not as far off as 3032. It'll happen before that, but we need to start thinking about the construction and implementation of what that's going to look like and who will sit on it. And it can't be people that we necessarily appoint. It will be another body that will help to create those opportunities for people to be appointed or apply for those positions to sit on the ethics commission. And also, we are going to create a governance task force model to begin this whole implementation, and that's probably going to start in the next couple of months, in the new year, because we have to. And then obviously it's important to also have checks and balances. So we're going to have kind of like an OMB, Office of Management and Budget, I want to say, but a budget office that will handle where all the budgets come together, and then be able to make presentations and give that information not just to the board members but to the public. And then also like a legislative analyst office, much like the city of Los Angeles, to also review what motions and things that are coming our way that we need to be aware of, what the pros and cons are, what impact it would have on the county. So I think all of it is really, it is a major reform. It is, but I think that the public, the more they know about it, I think the more they're going to appreciate that time has come for us to change.
As part of your responsibilities, we were just talking about the Skid Row area, which wasn't yours, but now is and has been for a little bit.
Yes.
And you announced in September that there's been a 22% reduction in unsheltered homelessness,
Yes.
basically based on the Skid Row action plan that you put into place.
Right.
What have you learned? What is working? What isn't working? And how has that all progressed based on this action plan?
You know what is really helpful is that when we decided to look at putting together a plan of action for Skid Row, because obviously everyone's so concerned about the unhoused and what is happening there and the loss of life and people pretty much living on the street, it was our idea to form a task force, a group of people made up of unhoused individuals, as well as those different departments and agencies and providers that actually provide services there. How could we better integrate that? So it was a better process to develop a coordinated plan and to understand what the real needs of the residents of Skid Row are. And they're fantastic individuals that put time in, I would say a couple of months time, going around, listening to people, putting and documenting all of that. So there's a report that's out there that people can look at as well. But I will tell you that we also got additional funding from the state, from the governor. He gave us about $60 million together with what the county and the city put in. It's well over $280 million to help come up with this process and to be able to provide succinctly the services that are most desperately needed by the unhoused. So it's meaning shelter beds, treatment, medical treatment, mobile clinics, things of that nature, and also more services for those small providers that are right now suffering because of the pandemic. They didn't have enough money maybe to provide enough wraparound services. So now there will be better coordination, and it's being all rolled out now. And I want to tell you that I learned a lot. I learned a lot that our population of unhoused has also changed. There's a lot of elderly women, widows, yes, that are finding themselves
On Skid Row?
Yes, because perhaps they are widowed, they lost their home, or they don't have anyone to help supplant and give them perhaps the nurturing and financial assistance that they had, and many are finding themselves unhoused. So we worked also with the Downtown Women's Center to also focus on women, because that is also an increased area of need, and building out more housing for them, and hopefully building out for some women who have children also, because there aren't a lot of facilities or shelters that allow for a family unit for, say, a single mom and her children. So we know all of these efforts have to come to bear, and we're starting a lot of those projects right there on Skid Row. We're also looking at developing where Crocker Street is, a Crocker hub that will come about, I think, next year, and that will be for people that really need acute assessment and diagnosis and treatment on the spot, and we'll have different services that will be provided there. And I think that's going to help provide a lot of relief to our emergency hospitals, our beds, and hopefully lower the costs, because we'll be able to treat people right there and then start them on their path to getting the kind of services that they really need.
In this task force, with these people who are unhoused, talking to other people who are unhoused, have you been able to determine the designations of where the most critical things are? Obviously, widowed women on the street sounds terrifying, but is it really?
And they're not typically the ones that are suffering from, say, I want to say, and I don't want to generalize, but like substance abuse and things like that. But I will say that many of the women on the street have had assault, trauma. So that is really important, because that's also, you know, can impact your mental state and how you feel, and you know, just even how you see yourself. So putting more mental health services and counseling for domestic violence and people who've been victimized, those are really important things too. And of course there are different patterns and paths to take, because some people will need to have more acute coverage. Say if they've been on the street and they have been using drugs for a long time, that is going to require different medical and diagnosis, as opposed to someone who maybe just became homeless maybe 2 years ago or a year ago. So yes, there are different paths, and I hope that we have a variety of potential opportunities, vouchers available, hotel, motel vouchers, but also interim housing, but more importantly, permanent housing with wraparound services, because you can't just put someone somewhere without assistance. They'll fail. They'll go right back on the street, and we know that. So those are some of the things that we've come to know.
Along with looking for solutions to problems, you put into place in 2017 the plan for the LA General Hospital
Restorative Care Village.
Thank you for saying that. Oh no, stumbling over my words. That is almost done. The final phase is well underway. How has this project demonstrated where care is needed, and how have you seen positive results from it? Or has it been a learning curve that you have to make adjustments for, and there have been challenges? Has it been all sunshine and roses and everything's great? Or are there things that need to be done? But what has this done for the county, and what have you learned from it?
Well, I think first off, it's important to know that we don't have enough beds for people that really need, say, step-down treatment. So instead of having people that are unhoused, that have maybe psychiatric needs, mental health needs, and substance abuse, it is better to put them in a separate entity, beds that are covered by professionals that can help them for more acuity. So they don't have to stay in the emergency hospital, which costs more. So that helps us there automatically, and giving them that space to be able to recuperate. So we created about 96 what we call recuperative beds, and that has been helpful already, and that's been up and going. We have a provider that has been helping people to kind of get off the ground. Sometimes it's just about, it's not so much that everyone is unhoused, but people that are, how could I say, financially not in a good condition, don't have someone to take care of them. Maybe they don't even have a home, but they get assistance there. They get all the wraparound services, job training, and eventually are referred, once they get better, to, say, permanent housing. And what I like about the program is that it's 24 hours, but it's open, and people can get 3 meals. They see their physicians, they see healthcare advocates, but they also see people in the community to help encourage them with the wraparound services if they need other kinds of things to stabilize. And I think that has been going well. There aren't enough spaces like that because some communities don't want that. They think, why do we need to have people that were formerly housed or maybe have gone through some really tragic things? Why do we need to have them here? I believed it was important for us to utilize our space at the General Hospital, and we had plenty of space. So we knocked down pretty much some old buildings or parking lots that weren't being used, and we have moved in that direction. So we've already created 90, as I said, 96 recuperative beds, and then on top of that, 64 acute, subacute beds, and that's for the even harder to place people that need to be covered almost 24 hours, and that is because they really have some very high needs. And sometimes you can't just put those places, say, out in communities that may not understand what that means. And so that has been the hard challenge, is really trying to find more beds, where to build them. And for me, it was easy to make the decision, why not use property that is already a medical campus? And so that's where we are now, and we're going through the second phase, which is going to be to build out more beds of that nature, and a sobering center for 24 hours, so you don't have to be in the trauma unit or psychiatric unit at General Hospital, which costs more, and there aren't a lot of beds there, and you can be placed somewhere else and have 24-hour coverage and stay there for a short period of time once you become well, and then placed at another step-down facility on campus.
We have obviously learned that there's economic issues, there's substance abuse issues, but then there is also, as you mentioned, those that will never be able to care for themselves.
Yes.
In the acute situation that they'll never. Are there plans in the county to, I'm going to use the word institution, but I don't really mean it as one might feel
as
that.
Previously,
because it had such a bad connotation to it.
Right.
But permanent, safe environment for those that will never be able to care for themselves.
Yes, in fact, we'll be able to have some of those beds where I'm talking about at our campus, but also I know that Supervisor Hahn is looking at also providing an opportunity with some new acquisition of property that the state is giving to the county, so they can build out that kind of setting and a big campus as well. So now it's taken hold. The restorative care village approach, restorative care village approach is taking, its way through all of our 5 districts of the Board of Supervisors. So I will say that it's a good thing, but it does take time because you can't just build these things overnight. There's funding, there's permitting that has to go on. You have to secure staff, and you also have to have all the contracts, the environmental reports all done. Everything has to fit neatly, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of expertise.
Yeah, we brought it down quickly. It's going to take a long time to bring it back up. So on a positive, looking towards the future note, we're going to blink, and it's going to be 2028, and we're going to have the whole world come to Los Angeles and enjoy a bonding experience wrapped around athletics and everything that happens here. Are we close to being ready?
I would say we are in preparation mode right now. We know there's a lot. Some of us had an opportunity to go see and visit Paris. I got to see the transportation system because I'm a part of Metro here, and it was fascinating. They obviously have a smaller geographic area to deal with, but they've had the subway system there for over 100 years. Ours is not that old. Yes, and people are used to riding on that. Here, it's a little different. It's a little more challenging. So we have to come up with more buses, bus lanes, and also making sure that we can make connectivity between where the games are going to be held, because a lot of them will be held, I think, here in the city of LA, but some in Long Beach and some in other places, potentially even as far as, say, Pomona, Bonelli Park, Laverne, and even perhaps even Whittier Narrows. So how do we get there? If there's no subway rail system right now, then we have to talk about buses. And that is something that we are focusing on, getting funding to secure that, to do the right analysis so that we can create those bus pathways. So that's exciting for me because I get to be involved in some of that right now.
And how are we in the realm of safety? Tons of conversation about safety when it comes to public transportation. Definitely some pretty tragic horror stories that have taken place over the last year. How are we, as if I have anything to do with it, how are those that are working on it trying to make sure that all of those questions are answered before they become bigger questions?
Well, we've gone through kind of a lot of self-analysis at Metro, looking to see how we can better serve our customers and make sure that there is safety. And one thing that we have learned is that we have to have, for example, our own security system in place, our own officers that work exclusively for Metro.
Okay.
It doesn't mean that we won't call on LAPD or LA Sheriffs for things, but to have our own internal service unit that can help us and understand how to deal with people, because sometimes it's not a matter of having, say, just a law enforcement person talk to a homeless person. Sometimes it takes maybe contacting what we call an ambassador or a health person that is skilled and trained to deal with homeless people.
To de-escalate the whole thing.
Yes, and to take that approach. So we're going through all of that right now. I'm happy you're bringing it up because we're right now in the phase of looking to identify who that person will be that will lead that. It'll kind of be like our public safeties are, and then they will help to build out a team. And all of this with the intent of having it in place by the Olympics.
And being at the Paris Olympics, definitely Paris took advantage of the fact that it's Paris. It's, it has its own artistic sensibilities. It has its own joie de vivre. It has all, and it really celebrated it, to the extreme, to this, to what you know classically, to what they like to play with. Did you learn a little bit about what the LA Olympics should feel like so that it maintains Los Angeles's
identity?
Personality?
Yeah, I think there's a lot that's going to be brought together. I was at a convening just about 2 weeks ago with a group of people involved in the arts. How do we expand?
Which you are a huge supporter of.
Yes,
thank you very much.
Yes, and continuing to build that out across the county so that we can have venues for people to watch the Olympic Games if they can't afford it, maybe at a park out in Whittier or in South El Monte or Pomona or San Fernando, and be able to have activities
Community
that pop
experience.
up, yes, that are organic, but that are supported by our communities, by the county, and hopefully by LA 28. And intertwining all that, because just think about it, we are an international hub. How many languages are spoken? How many different little places have their own distinction? Little Tokyo, Chinatown, Armenia, Thailand. I mean, you think about it, everyone has their little distinction, but those are jewels, and we want people to celebrate that. So when other people from other outside countries come, they can feel some attachment like, oh, gee, that's familiar to me. And wow, it's exciting to be able to see it on display and to really get our consulate offices involved, our educational, academia, as well as our community-based organizations, even say the local Cub Scout or Girl Scout, because I saw that in Paris.
Oh, I love that whole idea of creating a communal event, even if you can't necessarily participate in being at one of the actual events. I love that idea. Speaking of the communal event, with the Dodgers winning the World Series and the honoring the life of Fernando Valenzuela, did you notice that LA loves to rally together and that the morale went up? Did you learn anything from that experience about how we can utilize that
energy?
Exactly.
Yes. Oh my God, it was phenomenal to see the parade that was finally held here in downtown, and to see the enormity of enthusiasm, everybody coming together. And it couldn't have happened at a better time, I think, for us, to be honest, to kind of think we're all here as neighbors, and we're all celebrating something that we can all be proud of, which is our LA Dodger team, the championship, and just coming about in camaraderie. And I think it's beautiful. And to celebrate Fernando Valenzuela, who really brought a lot of people from, say, my community, the Latino and immigrant Mexican-American community, together for decades, watching him play, and everybody feeling so proud and wrapping their arms around that was really just incredible, really.
Speaking about being the child of an immigrant family, there's going to be a change in the White House, obviously, the first of the year.
Yes.
Were you confident that it's going to be okay here in Los Angeles at large or in Southern California? Were you a little worried?
You know, we went through this when Trump was previously president, and we prepared for it. Obviously, nothing is ever perfect, but I think we all those of us that were involved at that time understand how important it is to safeguard our rights and to make sure that our community is prepared and that we have venues for them to go to if they're stressed right now or they need to get things in order legally. There are avenues and there are places to go that will provide legal assistance to people. And I worry about the kids, the children, because I remember children and parents were so concerned about not even sending their kids to school because they thought they might be picked up, and those things did happen. But we have safeguards now. We have laws in place that say, well, we're not going to collaborate with ICE coming into, say, our schools or our courthouses or whatever unless there is a warrant, and that's different. So I think we're getting prepared. I think LA City just voted on their sanctuary movement, and really what that means is that we are going to put up safeguards, so to speak. And that's what I think we will also be doing. I know we're going to be doing it at the county, and this coming week we're going to have a motion on the board that I'm putting forward that will again rebuild that and help to sustain our Office of Immigrant Affairs that already exists to help provide information to different groups, because it isn't just Latino, it's also, there are a whole bunch of other people that are here that are in that same predicament for representing other countries. So we have to do our best to help provide them with access to information. And obviously we have to see what happens, how it unfolds.
What do you want your legacy to be? What do you want to be remembered for as
a supervisor? I think being able to actually get the county to kind of change to be more, how could I say, absorbing information from the public and then putting that to action and really allowing the public to have a say-so and really putting our energies, our tax-paying dollars towards those efforts and really reaching out to people that normally don't even know what government is about, but are so busy in their lives but struggling that we make that connection so that they can have a better quality of life. That's what I want to be remembered for, and helping to empower and lift people up so that they think better about what their future looks like.
But if people really want to get some information about what's happening in your office and with the county supervisors and all the things that we've discussed, what's the best way for them to find out?
The best way is to call 211.
Got it.
That is kind of our major center where people can call, and if you speak different languages, there are people, operators that'll speak to you and direct you to the right department. And then they can go to lacounty.gov. They can also call our offices, the Board of Supervisors, lacounty.gov BOS, and they can look up whatever, where they live, who their representative is, which supervisor it is. For us, it's 213-974-4111. That's our phone number for the 1st District.
Well, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule, and I will talk to you before you end up your term, so promise me that.
I will.
Okay,
I will. Thank you. It's a pleasure. Thank you. It's always good to be here.
And that's a wrap on this LA Currents.